Hello guys, this is the Betamax man. This is a chassis out of a Sanyo 7200. It's the Beta Hi-Fi, as you can tell. This particular mechanism I gotta change. I have to change out the door on this because the door is messed up. Somebody for some reason cut a chunk of the door off. Why, I don't have any idea why somebody would do that, but I'm restoring the 7200, and I have the mechanism taken out, because when you take the parts out of the machine, you can clean the parts, you can clean the plastic chassis, and that's basically what I'm doing, is cleaning the plastic chassis. And I'll show you that. Part 2 will be reassembling the stuff, and then also showing what the problem was. I'm not going to tell you what the problem is, because I want to save that for the next video. But here is a Sanyo Beta cord chassis mechanism. This mechanism was used in almost every Sanyo made. Every Sanyo Beta made had this chassis, except for the 7250. 7250 was a Super Beta Hi-Fi, and it had a direct drive motor for the idler, and it had a direct drive motor for the capstan. So that mechanism is different from this. So the only this video is not going to be useful for the 7250, but all of the other Sanyo models have this. Except this, it has a front loader. The other models, the 4000 series, like the 4000, the 4200, the 4400, they had a top loader, but still used the same chassis. So I'm going to show you how to get a tape that is stuck. I'm going to show you how to get the tape unstuck. Now I'm going to go ahead, and yes, the plate, there is a plate that goes here that has been removed, so I can show you the inner workings of this thing. So I'm going to load a tape, and I'm going to edit the video. We're going to cut back into where the tape is loaded, and then I'm going to explain to you how to get your tape out if you've got a stuck tape. Now, a lot of people do already know how to do this, but for you people that don't know these machines, are not familiar with them, and you don't work on them, and this might be helpful if you've got a tape stuck inside of a Sanyo. So let me get this loaded, and then I will cut back in. Okay, so now you can see that the cassette is loaded. Now, the reasoning for doing the video with the chassis out, of the VCR, is because I can show you in detail how this machine loads and unloads, and I can simply just turn the mechanism around and show you just exactly what it does. Now, I'm going to show you how to get your tape out, but I want to explain just a few things on how this machine works. And this is very different from how a VHS system would work. Now, how a VHS system works is there is a tape guide on the right side, and there's a tape guide on the left side. And it takes the tape and pulls it up around the head this way. Well, with Beta, it's way different. Beta actually goes all the way around. It wraps all the way around the head. And the heads are actually the actual drum. The drum is stationary. So the drum does not turn. Only the head turns inside of the head drum assembly. So the head turns and scans. Now, the tape is the information, the video information on the cassette is recorded in a diagonal stripe. And basically the information is recorded onto the cassette, as you can see, at an angle. Now that angle is a lot different angle than VHS. The angle is much, there's a lot more of an angle with beta than VHS. And that's why when somebody takes a Betamax recording, takes the tape out and puts it in a VHS cassette, puts it in a VHS machine, that's why you have no video, because that's why it won't work, because the heads are recording that at a different angle. The angle is just a slight different from VHS. So that's why you get sound, because the sound is very, very similar to how it's done on the VHS. So you'll get sound, but you won't get any video because it's recorded, like I said, at a different angle. Now here, this is your control track and audio head. So you have your linear audio, and your tracking head is right here. So your audio head's going to be down on the bottom there. If I remember right, it's on the bottom, and the control track is more in the center area and upper area. But anyway, and then you have your pinch roller, which pushes up against the capstan. The capstan is what regulates the speed and the movement of the cassette. So you have, with this particular system, you have two loading motors that do the different functions. This is your loading motor for threading and unthreading the tape around the drum. This motor right here is for the actual tape to go in and out of the machine. This tape goes forward and drops down, and then when it ejects, it lifts up and pushes back out. So it's very simple to get your tape out of a stuck Sanyo. So basically all you have to do is turn the motor here, turn this pulley. This pulley connects to the worm gear. As you can see, this worm gear meshes with a regular cam gear and then that cam gear is connected to the ring. This ring, which is what pulls and unthreads your cassette. So you want to move the belt towards the front of the machine for unloading. Now, as you can see, that the motor is now unthreading. So if I move it back, it's gonna go back, as you can see. Okay, now I'm going to start unthreading it. So you just move the pulley towards you, and as you can see, it's starting to unthread. Now as this is unthreading, the idler motor is running, and it is spooling your tape back in. So on the Sony's, I believe it's the take-up reel that turns when it's unthreading, but it's on the Sanyo's. It's the supply reel is turning to spool it back into its shell. Or no, wait, no, it's reversed. Okay, so the right side, which is your take-up reel, is going to turn as it unthreads so that the tape gets put back into its cassette before the other motor kicks in and ejects your cassette. So let's keep going on this. Let me just show you. So your VCR would be like this, right? So you'd want to move your finger this way so that, you know, you're unthreading. So we're going to do this, and this is going to be a way that you can do this here. Okay. So once you do this step, it's gonna it's gonna do this. Now, what I suggest is taking your finger, taking the film, and just move the film, pull your film back like that. So that when you're unthreading, now you're unthreading the tape around the drum. It's now retracting. If it was working correctly, it would be retracting the cassette. So the take-up reel would be turning to spool the tape back in as this is unloading. So it's very good to have the chassis out of the machine, because you guys can actually see just exactly what these parts are doing, and I'm going to explain everything in detail on how this works in just a minute here. Sometimes the great thing about, you know, YouTube is that people like me who know what to do can teach you guys something that you don't know. I mean, I just think YouTube is wonderful because people, you know, out of the kindness of their hearts, show people how to do things like this. And I enjoy doing this kind of stuff. I always like to help people out if I can, you know. And I had a guy comment on asking me if I had a part, and I'm still gotta check because I don't know if I have it, but I will see. I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but he asked me if I might know of anybody who had parts. Well, I do have some parts. So, why don't you, if you're watching this video, why don't you give me another comment down below and ask me just exactly what part you might need, and I will see if I have it. If you're watching this video, I have a feeling that you will be. Okay, so this is now fully unthreaded. Now, pulling the tape out of the way is a very good idea because the tape can actually get caught underneath here. It can get caught underneath this guide. Basically, this is just a guide for the ring to ride against. And the tape can get underneath there. So, if your tape gets underneath there and you go to pull your tape out, it'll rip your tape right in two. So, now that this is unthreaded, the next procedure that is going to happen is there's going to be a message sent to the VCR saying that this procedure is done. It's time to kick in this motor here, and this motor kicks in, and you can actually take your finger and move the gear back towards you, or you can move the belt as well. But you want to pull. As you can see, it's starting to lift the cassette up, and it's lifting it up out of the way. So you're going to get minimal tape damage by pulling the tape back, and that's what I recommend. Just do it early, because that way you don't get any into trouble. And as you can see, you have minimal damage. And you can hit the there's a little button right there on the side, or there's a little groove that you could take your key and put it in that slot. And that will allow the flap to move. So let me show you. Basically, you just take anything like a dental pick or a small screwdriver, and just there's a button here. So the right here, you can just push that, and your flap will now open up. You see? So now your tape flap will open up, and you can spool your tape back into the shell. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to set the camera down, and I'll show you something that does happen. Let me spool this back into its cassette, and I'll show you something that does happen. I'm just going to spool this back in here. And you got minimal tape damage. And there's no way that you can turn the idler motor to minimize. You can't pull the cassette, the tape back into the cassette, because you can't get to the idler belt, because the tape's, it's underneath the tape. So, but anyway, there we go. So now the tape is spooled back in. And there's a little tab, this little tab right here. Make sure your tape is in the front of it, because if your tape gets in behind like that, sometimes this does happen. If the tape gets behind like that, it will not, you will not have a proper picture. Your picture will not be correct. So make sure that that tape is always in front of that. So just make sure that's in front. The tape is in front of that little peg there. Okay, so what I mean about you're not going to be able to turn the reels to spool your tape back in manually, that's why I suggest just pulling the tape back, because that way you'll minimize getting it caught underneath here, and you can just unthread it. But you can see that the motor, the idler belt and the idler tire is down underneath the cassette. So if the cassette is inside, you're not going to be able to move these reels unless the chassis was unless your chassis was out. So if the chassis is out of the machine, you can just take your finger and move the reels. You know, you see what I'm saying? You can just move them with your finger. You know, I'm just moving this with my finger, but this would have to be out of the VCR, because there's gonna be, you know, a circuit board right in the way. Now, it's possible that you might be able to just take the front circuit board off, but you'll still have the chassis in the way, the frame of the chassis, so you won't be able to turn the reels, you know. Now, because because the chassis is out, I can do this. So I never thought about this, but I could have done this. You could do that, minimize tape damage, but you have to unplug a lot of wires. There's 6 screws to take the chassis out. A screw there, so they're in the middle. There's a screw right here in the back, over here, and over here in the corner. And then there's one here and here. Now there's holes in the cassette housing so you can get to the screws. So I recommend getting a magnetized screwdriver, because you want to have that so you can pull the screw out. But the screw would be in this hole, straight down. So you can put your screwdriver down in there. You can take the screws out. Now there's these wires, these connectors, are going to connect to the circuit board. And then you've got wires underneath that connect to the circuit board. If you wanted to go through all that work, I mean, you could go through all the work of pulling the actual chassis out of the machine. But, that's an awful lot of work to, make sure that you don't have any, tape, you know, so that you don't eat the tape. It doesn't eat the tape, because you can manually turn that with the chassis out and you won't eat the tape. The only time I would recommend pulling the chassis out of the framework is if you had a tape that you absolutely did not want any damage happening to it. And that would be, you know, like family videos, like, you know, maybe family footage from, you know, say 1985, or footage from 1982, or whatever it is, you know. And you don't want the tape, you know, because we can thread. Now I'll show you the process of the tape going in and threading. So basically, so the tape would, oops, this door flap just messed up on me, but that's okay, we can fix that. But so your tape would go in, okay, let's fix, yeah, this is all messed up, there we go. So your tape goes in, right? You push your tape in, and the machine is going to suck the tape back in. So if I turn the gear here, if I move that gear forward, it'll pull the tape in, see? So it'll start pulling the cassette in. Okay. We'll just manually move this. I'll just move this here so we can manually get the tape sucked down into place. And the tape has got these spring-loaded guides. These plastic guides are spring-loaded, so now the tape is in place. Now, it'll now switch to this motor. The processor will tell this motor to turn on, and now this is going to start threading around the tape around the drum. So here's what I'm trying to tell you is that this is going to be, when you pull this back, the machine's not on, so it's not going to suck the tape back in. So let me show you by basically, I'm just going to pull it out here halfway, about halfway here, so that you guys can get the idea on what you can do. Trying to show you exactly what I'm meaning. Okay, so now when this, right, like you're gonna have tape slack, right? Because this is now going back in. So, you know, let's make this thing go all the way back in. I'm just gonna move the cassette, or so we're gonna unthread it all the way. Okay. So you could basically take your finger and turn. Now you can turn, see? Now I'm turning it, and now the tape is now sucked back in. So your idler, this is your idler. See, now I'm rewinding it. I can rewind it because the brake is on. I can't get the tape to go forward because there's a brake on there, but there's a braking mechanism too that works. So let me show you the brakes. So let me get this ejected and I'll show you. And all you're doing is just moving the pulley back. Or you can just take this gear and turn it and it'll start popping back up. Okay? So this is how this machine will load and unload the tape. And I'll show you the brakes on this thing. The brakes on a Sanyo is different. Here's your brake, right here. This is your brake. So this activates and deactivates when it's in the so the brakes, you know, they get applied when there's too much slack in the tape. When the tape is not tight, the brakes kick in so that the machine can spool it back in nice and tightly. So without those brakes, your machine would eat the tape. It would just shoot tape out. So it's just that's basically how you do it. Now there are two switches that tell the machine that there's a tape down into place. When the tape, this switch, this micro switch right here, this switch gets activated by the tape. When the tape drops down into the machine, this switch gets pressed and tells the processor to switch modes to this motor. And then the ring, it starts threading your tape. Now it finishes that. Now there's another switch here that tells it that it's fully threaded. And then the machine will start to play. So this is how this particular mechanism works. It's a very simple mechanism. So the switch that I'm talking about, right down here, this little switch by my finger here, okay, this little switch is what activates when it's finished the threading cycle. When it's threaded it all the way around the drum, that switch activates and tells the machine to stop turning the motor, that this thing is ready for play. Then the pinch roller will activate And because the pinch roller, when you hit play, it'll thread, and then the pinch roller will press the tape up against the capstan, and it will start to play, and the heads will spin up and everything. So the heads, I think they spin at around somewhere between 16 and 1800 RPM, somewhere around in there. So they're spinning at a pretty good rate. The heads are. So, but that's how this thing works. It's got a switch. Now, what is this switch? This switch is for the record tab. So, where's your record tab on a beta cassette? It's on the bottom. It's on your right side. So, here you go. There's the record tab. It's been punched. So, that means that this tape cannot be recorded on. This tab is there to prevent you from doing accidental recordings. You remove the tab so it doesn't get accidentally recorded on. I have seen cases where this switch has failed and the machine lets it record, even when the tabs are removed, because that switch has failed. So that does happen. That sometimes that switch can fail and it'll record over it even though you don't want it to. So I have seen that switch fail. But that switch fits this hole. Okay? So that is how this works. And that is how your Sanyo beta cords work. So I hope that this video helps you. As you can see, because the chassis is out, you can see the pulley. This is your idler motor right here. Looks like somebody has had this thing apart because there's tape on it, and it looks like somebody has resoldered the wires there. That's what it looks like to me. Somebody resoldered those wires to the motor. So maybe this motor had failed or something and somebody replaced it, and I don't know. Somebody probably replaced the idler motor at one time, and pretty sure that this has probably been replaced at one time, because that's not factory solder. As you can see, that's quite a bit of solder. It might have been me that done that. This might have been done by me, I'm not sure. No, it wasn't, because this is out of the one I'm working on now. So no, that would have been done by... So somebody else would have worked on this. So somebody else has worked on this machine. So, anyway, as you can see, the pivot. Now, this particular machine happens to have a geared idler on the top. And the idler on the top is for your play and picture search. The idler on the bottom is for your fast rewind or your fast forward. So when you hit stop and you hit rewind, your bottom idler is going to kick in. Now, they don't all have a gear on top and a tire on bottom. Most of them had a tire on the bottom and a tire on the top. So this particular one just happens to have the gear on top, which was common for the 4000 series to have this, where they have the geared on top. And that's why, like, it'll play, like, if it's got this geared idler on top, it will play, and you'll be able to do picture search. But your tire on the bottom is going to be wore out, so it will eat the tape. So when it unthreads, it'll just eat the tape. So that's because the bottom tire is not working. So that is all the information that I can give you to help you understand and know in simple terms. Just, I'm trying to simplify this, you know. Now, if we look at the head, we can see a pattern where the tape has rode up against. And this is basically to keep the tape into its right position, into the right height position. So these do get dirty sometimes. Sometimes it is good to unscrew them. This unscrews and this will lift off. It's always good to do a good cleaning on these feet here. Now this machine has what's called a dew sensor. Well, that is a dew sensor. What is a dew sensor? Well, it detects moisture on the video heads. If the dew light comes on, the machine will go into automatic shutdown and the machine will not do anything. It will not accept the tape, it will not eject the tape, it will not play a tape, it will not do anything if the dew light is on. So how do you get your dew light to come off? Well, what if you got it in a room and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for an hour, 2 hours, and the dew light won't come off? Get a hairdryer. Get a hairdryer, blow warm air around the head drum, and your dew light will go out. The hairdryer will warm up the heads and it will evaporate the condensation moisture on the heads and the dew light will go out. Now I have seen cases where the dew light fails. Now the dew sensor plugs in to the bottom board, the board that is directly underneath the chassis. That is the board where the dew sensor plugs into. Okay, and I have seen situations where the capacitor has failed, causing the dew sensor to either come on all the time or causes it to not work at all. So, and you can't trick the dew sensor either. You can't jump the two wires and trick it into turning the dew sensor off. The only way to get that dew light to go out when the machine light is on is to get a hairdryer and dry it. And the sensor, just blow warm air around the head, and then your dew light will come off. Now, most of the Sony models did not have a dew sensor. However, the professional industrial Sony Betamaxes did have a dew sensor. Because I don't know why, but the Sony put a dew sensor in their industrial machines, but not the home machines. And I kind of think that they probably should have done that, because that'll keep your machine from damaging the tape. Because if you've got a Sony machine, it doesn't have a dew sensor, and there's moisture on the head drum or the head, the tape, well, the drum basically, moisture gets on the drum and the tape gets chewed up, the tape gets wrapped around it. And anyway, so that is basically all I can tell you about how the mechanism works on the Sanyos. I don't remember what this chassis is called. I know the different chassis for the Sonys, but the Sanyo, I don't remember what the chassis name was. But anyway, that is how. See, when I was putting my finger in there, I was just turning it. See, I was just turning it. And see, so, and this goes back and forth. See, goes back and forth. This pivots. This is your pendulum. Pivots back and forth for either rewind, fast forward, or play. When it's in play or fast forward, it's going to go to the right. When it's in rewind, it's going to go to the right, left. So when it's in rewind, it'll go to the left. When it's in play or fast forward, it'll go to the right. Okay? So I hope this video helps you guys and helps you understand a lot more about the Sanyo beta machines and how they operate. Because I don't think anybody has really done a video telling you and explaining to you what these different modes do, how the machine works. So I think this might help you guys out, and I hope it does anyway. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and if you would like to share this video with a friend, I encourage that you do so, because I'm hoping that my knowledge can help you not only get your stuck tape out, but my knowledge may be able to help you repair your Sanyo. Now, what are the most common issues that Sanyos have? What's the #1 reason why Sanyos don't work? Bad idler tires and bad belts. That's the #1 cause of Sanyo beta machines not working. These Sanyos are incredibly, stupidly reliable. I mean, just reliable, 100% reliable. You cannot kill a Sanyo. You cannot kill these things. You know, mechanically, the Sanyo models, and in a lot of cases electronically as well, the Sanyos will outlive the Sonys. The Sonys have so many switches. Sony's used a lot of solenoid switches. There's so many micro switches in the Sony. And the Sanyos have about half the switches that a Sony does. And Sonys have a lot of problems with the capacitors. And idler motors, you know. But for Sanyos, it's always going to be your belts and your tires. Sometimes you'll have an electrical problem. I've had servo issues. I had a Sanyo 7250 and it had a servo issue. And I had to recap the whole servo board in order to get the machine working again. Because if you've got a Sanyo that you're playing a tape and it's not got a picture, your picture is bad, or you don't have a picture, sometimes that could be in the servo, you know, or sometimes it could be in the preamp, which is what sends the signal from the heads to the TV. So this should help you guys, and this should help you maybe understand more about the chassis. And if you understand how they work, you can repair them. If you understand how to resolder, you know, learn how to solder. And maybe what I'll do is I'll give you guys some tips and tricks of the trade on how to solder, what to look for. Okay, what is a good solder joint? What's a bad solder joint? What is a dry joint? What is that? Okay. Well, I'll do a video on this. Maybe later on. Write me a comment down below if you want me to do a video on that. Okay? Let me know. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.